So I have three things I want to share with you today, and each one of these could be released as what I like to call a shop short, but I decided we'll do all of these together in something I guess we'll call Scott's Bunched Up Shorts. So here's the first one. So I'm getting ready to do some turning, and I thought I would go ahead and mention this little part right here. We use this to lock the extension tables and to lock our tailstock in place. And it's something that occasionally can fall out. I've seen people overturn these and have them fall out on the floor. That's because these can be positioned either direction. Now, what's the difference? Well, if I were to hold on to this little bolt right here while turning the handle this way, you can see that that bolt will project. But if I have it in this hand and I turn it the same way, that bolt is backing in. Yeah, these are reverse thread. And the way I like to position this, I like to have mine, and these act almost like little wrenches that are on those square bolts. I like it so that when I rotate this down on this side, those bolts are going out. And so that way I always know when I put something in here on the end, I rotate it down like that and it's tight. Also, I'm never going to get myself in a situation where I'm going to roll that so far that it falls off, because the more I rotate it forward, the more those bolts are expanding. So let me put that back in, and that's perfect. I've heard from several people that they're having a problem with this post rotating. They're going to do some turning, and they put their tool rest in place, and they adjust the proper height. Maybe they're swinging it in to do some bowl turning. They tighten everything down, and yet it still rotates. Now, if I tighten this down, why did I use the short end? I don't know. Here we go. If I tighten that down, you can see I got a little bit of play here, but that's because I haven't completely tightened down my headstock lock. And then with that, I get barely any play at all. Now, one tip that I would use is always, before you finally tighten this down, push your tool rest into the stock, because again, you can see there's a little bit of play there. At that point, go ahead and tighten your set screw and then tighten the headstock lock. And that way, if it's going to go anywhere, it's going to go away from your bowl. If you're spindle turning, same thing. You adjust this to where it's parallel to your spindle, put a little bit of forward pressure on it so everything's aligned properly, and then tighten it, and then come back and make sure it's tightened here at the back. Now, Shopsmith did make an improvement to the way all this locks down. In fact, they've made a couple of improvements. One is, instead of cutting threads all the way around this post, like you see on this old tool rest post, see those are threads, now they have a flat ground on either side of that rack. That way, we have something to clamp against down inside on that pinion. Another subtle change that they made sometime after the introduction of the Mark V Model 510 was they added a cut. They made a through cut. They actually make this on the bandsaw, cutting all the way through, so that as you're clamping this down, let me put this on the far side to give me some resistance there. So as we're clamping this down, you can see that this is beginning to close a bit. Now, by adding this split on both sides of the carriage, both front and back, Shopsmith greatly increased the clamping action on these posts. Another thing you might want to double check is to make sure that you have the proper number of washers in the proper position. There's one washer that's underneath the wheel here, another washer on top of the wheel. And if you get in a situation where it feels like that bolt is bottoming out in here, you can always add an additional washer. Now, years ago, Shopsmith came up with a recommendation of how to deal with this if your tool rest post has that spiral groove. And that is to take your 6-inch belt sander and lay it down flat as I have it here. I did a video on this. If you don't know, there's a bolt that's preventing yours from going, any further than about 45 degrees. And we're going to take our table and we're going to move it around to the side, like so. And I'm just going to have that held off of the bed by about my finger thickness. And now all we do is we ground a flat on here that's about a 1/4 inch wide. I'm going to take a marker and I'm going to mark a spot so I can keep an eye on it and make sure that I'm returning it back to that same spot if I pick it up. Now note that this is steel, and so it's likely to begin rusting very soon. So I'm going to make sure that this gets a nice coat of wax on it. I do have a flat up here, but that's not where I needed the flat. I need the flat down here where it's threaded. And let's see how this does now. All right, so here's my flat. There is a part of this pinion. In fact, let me pull this off and show it to you. This is the part of the pinion, this flat surface, that's going to bear against that flat part that we just ground on the tool rest. So as that engages, it should position right about there. And as we push forward, it gives it a flat corner to lock against. Then I'm going to push it forward and then tighten it the balance of the way. And that should prevent it from slipping forward. Let me show you what happens if I put this post on any other spot and tighten it down. That's as snug as I can get. It just rotates super easy. Let's get back around to our flat spot. About there. Oh, there it is. Kind of feel it drop right in. Well, moving the machine around. Okay. So, like, I have another old tool rest that's also just a mess, needs a flat ground onto that. But more importantly, it's super rusty. So keep in mind that once you've done this kind of work to it, you're going to want to get some paste wax on it right away. Also, let me note, I'm using an old belt sander back here. This belt sander has an aluminum dust chute on it. Modern dust chutes on these belt sanders from probably the last 20, 25 years have been made of plastic. So if you want to make sure that nothing melts down on you, you might want to remove the dust chute. It's 2 bolts and it's off. And other than that, it's all pretty straightforward. I look forward to your questions, comments, and cheap shots. Make it a great day.